Okay, welcome to the secret number one for the diet-proof life. We've already done all of our introductions in the previous video, so there's no reason to waste any time with any more introductions. Let's just dive right into secret number one. I'm just gonna pull up the slides, so just give me 2 seconds to get to where I need to be. La la la. And almost. Okay, here we go. This is what I want to be sharing with you. So let's present that and get going. All right, the secrets of the diet-proof life. Secret number one is to end dieting deprivation. Sorry, get rid of that. This secret means that we are going to allow all foods, all the time, always and forever. And there is no exception or fine print to this rule ever. We are lifting all restrictions with food to end deprivation-driven eating. Emotional eating expert and author Janine Roth states that the fourth law of the universe is that for every diet, there is an equal and opposite binge. When something is off limits, it becomes more enticing just by being forbidden. We see this in so many things, not just food. Just being told you can't do something can drive you to do it, if only to prove them wrong. Being told you can't have something you want can make it that much more desirable. Food becomes shinier simply by trying not to eat it. So, as Janine Roth says here, as long as there's deprivation with food, there will be a proportional backlash eating response. What we need to do is dig deep to find every bit of deprivation lurking beneath the surface. Because here's the ugly truth. You don't currently have to be on a diet to struggle with deprivation-driven eating. Yes, that's right. Deprivation haunts us long after the diet is over. And this is what I lovingly refer to as the ghosts of deprivation past, present, and future. We can be haunted by the ghost of deprivation past by binging after a diet, the ghost of deprivation present by trying to place a limit on what we eat in the current moment, then instantly rebelling, or deprivation future by planning to be really, really good with food, even start a diet perhaps tomorrow, so we can check out and eat everything in sight until then. And if you're anything like me, you've been lucky enough to be haunted by more than one ghost at the same time. Now, as we've already talked about, the simple answer to overcoming deprivation-driven eating is to give yourself permission to eat any food, anytime. And we're going to dig into the more subtle and nuanced aspects of deprivation in just a moment. But I want to make a few things about full permission and choice with food really clear. The first is, I want you to really understand that this full permission to eat whatever you want is never, ever going away. That will trigger ghost of deprivation future eating. There is never a time when the rug is going to get pulled out from underneath you, when it's going to be like, okay, you've had your fun, but now no more carbs. It's all foods, all the time, forever and ever. Secondly, the goal isn't to get sick of the foods you love so that you won't want to eat them anymore. The goal is actually the complete opposite. It is to be clear about the foods you truly enjoy that bring you the most satisfaction so you can stop putting the mediocre calories in your mouth. Love what you love and eat it often. Again, you don't need to fear a future deprivation. That's right, chocolate isn't going anywhere. Lastly, please know that no matter your current size, you deserve to enjoy and gain satisfaction from your eating experience. Being overweight does not disqualify you from this. In fact, this idea that you are fat, so you shouldn't be eating, quote unquote, likely awakens the ghost of deprivation present, which causes you to overeat. When, if you just had the permission to enjoy your meal, you'd be able to stop when you'd had enough. I know, the irony is crazy. So I just want to be really clear that no matter where you are in this journey, you deserve to enjoy every bite of food that goes into your mouth. You deserve to have a pleasurable eating experience every single time, starting right now. So now let's look at each of the deprivation ghosts, what might trigger them, and some practical strategies to lay them to rest for good. First, the ghost of deprivation past, the lingering effects of the diet mindset. Like Janine Roth said, deprivation creates a response of overeating. The further back you pull the slingshot, the more potential energy you give that eventual binge. At this point, you may be nodding, thinking of one of the real doozies you've experienced. Or perhaps your thinking is less extreme. Perhaps it's more like, I've been good all day or all week, so I deserve a break. Either way, you're trying to escape the toll that the deprivation of being quote unquote good with food creates. We're going to talk more about good foods versus bad foods in the next lecture, but I want you to see that this line of thinking is deprivation based and it drains you emotionally. Or you may not be on a diet anymore at all, but the bitter aftertaste is that you can't trust yourself with food. You've experienced enough diet backlash eating to know how out of control you can get. So you've heard all about this intuitive eating business and you think that would never work for me. I would eat everything in sight, including the kitchen sink. I need rules. I need guidelines. I need restrictions. All of this is past deprivation talking. It has made you feel fearful and powerless. Or there's just all the rules. Don't eat after 7 p.m. No white flour. Drink a glass of water before the meal so you feel fuller. No fried foods. Even without a strict diet regimen, these rules linger in the corner of your mind. So instead of just enjoying the food, it's always tainted with, well, I really shouldn't. And this guilt robs the experience of its potential satisfaction. And anytime we limit satisfaction, we are that much more likely to overeat. This is how the ghost of deprivation past can continue to drive overeating long after the diet and even its subsequent binge are over. So to counter deprivation past, I want you to challenge your thinking. Have all these rules and diets and restrictions gotten you where you want to be? Have they served you in any real way other than to create guilt and uncertainty about the daily basic necessity of eating? If you're here listening to this, my guess is probably not. The restricting hasn't worked, so take a chance and try focusing on something new. The best place to start is to make every eating experience pleasurable and satisfying. Choose the foods and create the environment that will serve this end. Now, of course, every meal won't be prepared by a gourmet chef served on a silver platter, but maximum enjoyment is the goal. And in doing this, you'll begin to see that you aren't a bottomless pit after all, that you can be in the same room with carbs and chocolate, and that ghost of deprivation past, she'll start staying in the past where she belongs. Okay, on to ghost of deprivation present, learning to get as much pleasure from eating as possible. Now, while there are many reasons you might deny yourself food in the present moment, most of them stem from the diet rules we just addressed in the ghost of deprivation past section. But for the diet-proof life, there are two main things I ran into as I implemented these skills, and I see my clients run into these things as well. So we're going to focus on them as the biggies that keep ghost of deprivation present around. The first is, I'm not hungry, but I want to start eating. The second is, it's time to stop eating, but I want to keep going. Interestingly enough, both of these issues stem from the same place, turning quitting diets into the eat when you're hungry, stop when you're full diet, which means when you aren't experiencing hunger, you've just created a rule in your head that all food is now off limits. And you also start every meal telling yourself that you can only have so much. So from the very beginning, you're already fearing the time when your hunger will be gone and you will have to stop eating. It's really counterproductive to what these skills are supposed to be offering, which is peace and freedom with food. It also hinders satisfaction, which, as we already talked about, increases the chances that you'll overeat. But for us professional dieters, it's an oh so easy trap to fall into. We've been programmed to turn everything into an all or nothing set of rules. So first off, say it with me. I am not on a diet. You can eat whatever you want whenever you want it. But you're still hungry, not hungry, and you still want to eat, and we do need to deal with that. When I'm in this situation, I like to use the permission to eat any foods anytime to call my own bluff. I say, okay, I want to eat, so I'm going to eat, but no halfway effort. Go big or go home. I get good food out, I put it on a plate, and I sit down to eat it. When I consciously own my choice to eat and give myself permission to eat, even without hunger, emotional satisfaction gets triggered much more quickly. And without physical hunger or deprivation to drive my appetite, I lose steam pretty quickly. Sometimes after only a few bites, sometimes without eating any food at all. Just seeing all that food in front of me and telling myself, okay, now eat, is enough to make me heave. If you do choose to eat some of the food, extract as much pleasure from the experience as possible. Enjoy and savor. You won't enjoy it as much as you would if you were truly hungry, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. But if you are going to take in the calories, don't ruin it with guilt and subsequent negative self-talk. Own your choice to eat without hunger, because you always have the choice. It's always up to you. So enjoy it and then move on. Now, what about when you are eating your meal and you can feel that you're getting satisfied, but you don't want to stop eating? There are a couple of tools to help you deal with this manifestation of the ghost of deprivation present. First off, it's really important to remember that this is a new sensation for many of us. We are used to feeling pretty stuffed before we finally stop eating, so it feels strange to walk away from food so much sooner than we are used to. And we will talk much more in depth about this in the satisfaction section, but I did want to touch on it here because it can be a factor. So when you feel you've had enough to satisfy your physical need for food, try taking one last perfect bite. Savor it and really enjoy it. Then, if you are still having trouble walking away from the meal, here are 2 suggestions. First, walk away from the food and find something else to do for 10 minutes with full permission to come back and keep eating if you realize you're still hungry, or if you just need a few more bites to feel okay about being done with eating. It can really be anything you want. I've gone and blown my hair dry, organized the junk drawer in the den, played the piano, whatever random thing you want to do for 10 minutes. This just helps you get used to walking away from the food at an earlier time without it feeling so huge and scary. Second, tell yourself it's just an experiment. You're just trying out something. If it doesn't work or if it's too hard, you can always go back to the way you did it before. This pacifies the part of our brain that likes to freak out when we try to change our routine. It helps us to feel safe as well. No one is saying you can never do things the way you're used to doing them. There is no hard and fast rule about when you should be done eating. You're just playing around with something that might work for you and your body. It's just an experiment to see what happens when you stop eating a little sooner than you're used to. Nothing more. And all these little changes can go a long way in calming those feelings of deprivation that can crop up in the moment, even long after we've stopped dieting. I still use them, and we will talk about strategies like these even more in coming sessions, which means we just have one more ghost of deprivation left to tackle. That is the ghost of deprivation future. There is no diet coming ever. Okay, this ghost can be a little bit slippery. There is the more obvious get it while you can eating, meaning you know you're going to start a diet the next day or the next week, so you eat all the food now while you still can. Intuitive eating authors Treble and Resch call this Last Supper eating. You can call it whatever you want, but it stems from a fear of never being allowed to have certain foods ever again. Our overeating is driven by a perceived future deprivation. But what about in this new diet-proof world where we've quit diets and we aren't starting a diet in the morning? Ghost of deprivation future can still lurk about in the corners here, and we have to learn how to recognize it. There is no diet coming. You do not have to atone for your choices with food. One little perceived misstep with food does not mean you have to wait until the next day or the next week to start over. The ghost of deprivation future thrives on perfectionist thinking. If we are aiming to be perfect, one mistake becomes a license to binge for the rest of the day and then start over tomorrow or next week or never, because what's the point, really? There is no perfect. There is just you doing your best, and you don't have to punish yourself for being human. No more making up for anything or worrying about your future choices with food. As Holocaust survivor and author Corrie ten Boom wrote, worrying is carrying tomorrow's load with today's strength, carrying 2 days at once. It is moving into tomorrow ahead of time. Worrying does not empty tomorrow of its sorrows. It empties today of its strength. Did you ever have dinner plans and you spent the whole day overeating because you were so worried about what you would order that night? Or start panicking about Thanksgiving in August? Yep, me too. But now you no longer have to fear future events days or weeks or even months in advance. You know you can go and eat whatever you want and be just fine. So take that, ghost of deprivation future. Truly, deprivation creates a preoccupation with food that drives us crazy, as was demonstrated in a landmark starvation study conducted by Dr. Ansel Keys during World War II. The study was designed to help famine sufferers, and the subjects of this study were 32 healthy men who were chosen for their superior mental and physical strength and health. During the first 3 months of the study, the men ate as they pleased, averaging 3,492 calories per day. Then the next 6 months were the semi-starvation period. The men were required to lose 19 to 28% of their body weight, depending on their body composition. Calories were cut nearly in half to an average of 1,570 daily calories. The effects of this semi-starvation were shockingly similar to chronic dieting. Their metabolic rate decreased 40%. The men were obsessed with food, increased cravings, talking about food, collecting recipes. Their eating style changed, vacillating between ravenously gulping down food to stalling out the eating experience for hours. Researchers noted that several men failed to adhere to their diets and reported episodes of bulimia. One man reported a complete loss of willpower and ate several cookies, a sack of popcorn, and 2 bananas. Another man flagrantly broke the dietary rules and ate several sundaes, malted milks, and even stole penny candy. Some men exercised deliberately to obtain increased food rations, and their personalities changed. Apathy, irritability, moodiness, and depression set in. Then, during the refeeding period, when the men were once again allowed to eat at will, hunger pangs became more intense, and their hunger was insatiable. The men found it difficult to stop eating. Weekend binges added up to 8,000 to 10,000 calories. It took the majority of the men an average of 5 months to normalize their eating. Now, it's important to remember that during the era of this study, there were no celebrity trainers, no TV Food Network, or fitness and food divas. Nutrition research was in its infancy, yet these men experienced a primal obsession with food that was not media or society driven. Rather, it was triggered by a biological survival mechanism. Such behavior was never observed in these men prior to their food deprivation encounter. So don't underestimate what effects dieting has had on your body and mind, especially over months and years. It is time to end the deprivation for good. So your challenge for this lesson is the next time you're hungry, sit down and eat a beautiful, satisfying meal, whatever that looks like for you. No rules, no guilt, no deprivation, no frenzy that you'll never be able to have this food again. Eat, enjoy, and be satisfied. Okay, I'm going to exit out of the slides here, escape out of that, and let's see. Okay, we're going to stop the screen share and on. Now I gotta readjust my screen so you don't like have a close-up of my chin. Anyway, so you've got these ideas, you've got your challenge, and so I want you to play around with that. You may feel ready to move on to the next lesson right away, or you may want to work on this for a couple of days before you do. Either way, it is totally up to you, and whatever you decide, I will see you in the next lesson.